Hey, what's up, good people? I'm QC. This is a special interview for Talkin and Grubbin, and I have here the man who is a die-hard Baltimore Ravens fan, but he also gives you the latest NFL scoop, IngravenVids. How you doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Appreciate you having me on.
No problem. Thanks for joining me. Man, the AFC North has been least known for keeping head coaches consistently, except for the Browns, of course. The Bengals have had Marvin Lewis for a long time. Mike Tomlin's been the Steelers head coach for over 10 years. And John Harbaugh has been the head coach of the Ravens for 11 years. But now I hear that they're parting ways after this season. So what was your reaction when you first heard the news that the Ravens and Harbaugh were parting ways?
I wasn't surprised. Because this is something that I've been talking about it on my channel since before the season even started, because it's been time. And they even mentioned it. The GM and the owner, they even talked about that. They talked about it publicly that they thought about firing him last year after the season, but they decided to give him another shot. But I felt like it's been time. It's time to move on, because he doesn't get it done when it matters the most. And the team it's not because of a lack of playmakers. It's not because of a lack of quality players on the roster. It's just a direct reflection of coaching. That seems to be the problem. They just can't get it done when it counts the most.
Well, okay, well, people would argue against, play devil's advocate and say, well, this man is 10-5 in the playoffs. He's won a Super Bowl. So how can they just part ways from him so easily?
Well, when the Ravens were a clutch team, when they could actually close it out, when they finished the job that they started, the core was a lot different. Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Kerry Williams, Anquan Bolden, Torrey Smith, a younger Lodi Nada, a younger Terrell Suggs. But the main guys out of all of those people were Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. And it's been said, even by Bernard Pollard, who played on that Super Bowl team, it's been said that Ray Lewis, he was really the guy that was coaching the players up. He was really the person that was leading them. And the numbers back it up, because after Ray Lewis left, because when Harbaugh first came on board, first 5 years, so much success. Playoffs every year, and they won at least one playoff game every year. They went to AFC championships and, of course, ended up getting the Super Bowl. But then after Ray Lewis left, after Ed Reed left, after they traded away Anquan Bolden, got rid of a lot of the alpha males on the team, then the team, they started getting soft, and they've only been to the playoffs once after that. And the year that they actually went to the playoffs was the year that the offensive coordinator on the Ravens, it was Gary Kubiak, and that wasn't even a guy that was Harbaugh's selection. So it's crazy that the coaching staff, any coaching staff that's been, or team and coaching staff that's been completely assembled by John Harbaugh, they don't make it. They don't make it to the playoffs.
Okay, so how would you describe Harbaugh's 11-year tenure in Baltimore?
Overrated. And the reason I say overrated again is because it makes it look like he's just not that good of a coach. It makes it look like he's just an average coach, and just because of what Bernard Pollard spoke about, with how, like I said, it was Ray Lewis leading the team and leading the players and whatnot, and not really John Harbaugh, because John Harbaugh's been somebody that they've said he doesn't like alpha males. He doesn't like guys speaking up for themselves. He doesn't like guys speaking out against what he's trying to do. And it's shown with the players that he's willing to keep and the players that he's willing to get rid of. Because if you're not down with Harbaugh, then you're going to be shipped up on out of there. And it shows it's just made the team a lot softer. So I would say that would probably be the best way to describe it would be overrated.
Wow. Okay, now I heard that Harbaugh and Ed Reed had their issues when they were together in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that the main reason why Ozzie Newsome shipped out Ed Reed?
Yeah, they gave Harbaugh some say so, and Ed Reed Oh, we were spoiled with Ed Reed, man, because every safety that we have after him, and it's not fair to them, but every safety that we have after him is obviously compared to him. But yeah, that was part of the reason. I mean, Ed Reed was still a beast. He was obviously one of the best safeties to ever do it. But yeah, him and Harbaugh, they clashed a lot. And Ed Reed, he spoke about it earlier this year too. But yeah, they clashed a lot, and he wanted to stay in Baltimore. Harbaugh wasn't down with him staying in Baltimore. Harbaugh's the head coach. He's out of there. And they didn't re-sign him, and he ended up signing with the Texans. And then with the Jets shortly after that, too. So, yeah, he was another one.
Wow. So, what are former players' perceptions of John Harbaugh? Besides your Ed Reeds, your Ray Lewis's of the world, what about other players like a Anquan Bolden, etc.?
Anquan Bolden, I've never heard Anquan Bolden speak about Harbaugh before. The only player I really heard that's really outspoken about Harbaugh would be Bernard Pollard. He was the best one. And his examples with the team's record, it backs up everything that he was saying. Because at first, when I first heard about when Bernard Pollard first started speaking out about John Harbaugh, I was thinking, okay, maybe he's just a little bit soft because he got cut from the team or whatever. Even though he did get a Super Bowl, but he still got cut from the team or whatnot afterwards, and maybe he was just maybe in his feelings or something like that. But then when he spoke about the record, and I was looking at it myself, I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. It's just it makes too much sense because the way that the team changed over time, it just ended up changing for the worse, and they went from having so much success over and over and over and over and over to just being average and not making the playoffs, not being nearly as successful as they once were. And just the team, they got a lot softer. They used to be intimidating. Like, people used to fear Ravens defense. They used to respect them a lot more. But it's just not like that anymore. And ever since that, though, there was that exodus of those players, then everything just changed for the worse.
Okay, now the Ravens have been 44 and 45 since they won the Super Bowl in 2012. So what percentage does that fall on Harbaugh?
Oh, a great deal. I would say the percentage that it falls on Harbaugh, maybe close to, like, I would say about 90. Because Harbaugh, again, just him always clashing and just not being willing and not knowing how to deal with the alpha males, and just deciding, you know what, if there's an alpha male and they speak against me, then he's gonna get rid of him or throw him in the quote unquote doghouse. And so I would say that's pretty much all on John Harbaugh. I mean, obviously some falls with ownerships, with the GMs, because drafting and development has been a little suspect, but it's always been suspect as far as them drafting and developing receivers, more so development side, because Ravens have been doing that even when they were having success. They always they'll sign a veteran receiver, and then they'll draft a young guy, and then they won't ever play the young guys. Then they'll wonder why they end up not doing good, why they end up not panning out or whatnot, because they just don't ever give the young guys a chance. But I would say overall, I would say about 90% on Harbaugh, because he changed the culture that much.
Wow. So, okay, now John Harbaugh replaced Brian Billick, who also won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. What's the contrast between Harbaugh and Billick?
I think the contrast was Billick. I think Billick could deal with the alpha males a lot more, but at the same time, the game has changed so much from how it was when Billick was the coach. When Billick was the coach, you could do it with you can get it. Well, you obviously can get it done because they won the Super Bowl that way, but you can get it done with a super strong defense. Offense really ain't have to be anything when the Ravens won that first Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's true.
They got it done with a super strong, elite, just nasty defense. But that you could do that back then. But now, with the the rules have changed so much, and the rules are so much for the offense that you can't win that way anymore. And what the Ravens do, and then this is a mix of Harbaugh and the GM, they still been trying to win the old school way, and you can't do that. You can't. You just can't. So I think, but I think the biggest contrast between Billick and Harbaugh, I think Billick was more players coach, where the players really felt Billick. They were able to connect with him, talk to him, and just really vibe with him. And Harbaugh I don't see him as a players coach like that. But also the biggest difference between the two is the actual game itself, because the game has changed so much over time.
Okay. Now, you said in your video that it was time to move for the Ravens to move on for Harbaugh, and you felt that they should have done it sooner. Why do you feel that way?
Because the NFL is a results-driven league, and I understand all the success that the team had before, but they haven't had any success lately, and people can't keep holding on to that past success, that past Super Bowl, the past playoffs, because that's what a lot of people look at when Harbaugh. They say, oh yeah, Harbaugh, man, he had a lot of success. He won all these games for the Ravens and blah, 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 which is great. And we as fans, we really, really appreciate that and loved every moment of it. But recently, it's just, we've been in positions to succeed, but they just keep on failing. They keep on failing. And like I was saying earlier, it's not that they're missing a key player on the roster, or that they just need one more playmaker or something like that. It's just been being outcoached, and it's been like that. It's been over and over and over. So that's why I feel like they should make the move and just change the head coach and just change really the coaching staff as a whole.
So are you saying that John Harbaugh is basically your modern day John Gruden?
Not as bad, but well, John Gruden, oh boy, I feel bad for Raiders fans with that one, but they may have a bright future. We'll see how it works out with all those draft picks. So we'll see in about 2-3 years with him. But with Harbaugh, I just feel like he's not it. He's not it. He's just an average coach. I feel like he's not anything special. And it's just that time, man.
Okay, so do you think this departure is due to the fact that the front office is transitioning from Ozzie Newsome to his assistant Eric DeCosta?
No, I think that's a big that helps it. That helps the process. But I still think even if they would have stuck with Ozzie Newsome, I think they still would have fired Harbaugh this year. Reason being because they talked about it last year. But having a new GM that can sort of expedite the process. Since with having a new GM, with him taking over, he's probably going to want to do things his way, have his coaching staff in place, be able to select who he wants to be on the coaching staff as a head coach, offensive, defensive coordinator, and everything in between that. So I think that does play a big part in it. But I don't think that's the only reason that Harbaugh is getting, well, if he gets fired, I don't think that's the only reason that he's going to be fired.
Well, why has the front office and ownership stuck with Harbaugh this long?
Well, Steve Biscotti said it. He said it last year. He said it this offseason. He mentioned how with Harbaugh, he said he could have fired him and started over, but he said with Harbaugh's, with the percentage of seasons that Harbaugh had played, he made the playoffs more than he missed it. So he said, he could go out and start over, but he felt like Harbaugh was his best option. And they're tight. They're super cool. And I would expect them to be. I mean, they've been working, or at that time they had been working together for 10+ years. So obviously when you work with somebody that long, they become like family to you. And Ravens are not an organization that goes through a roller coaster of changes, especially in the front office with head coaches. With offensive coordinators, it's a little bit of a different story, but with head coaches, they are extremely consistent. At head coaches, they don't go through a lot of turnover there. So I think it's just a mix of being like family with each other, and him just him not wanting to get rid of Harbaugh because he knows the success they've had with Harbaugh there. So I think he just felt like the team is so close, which they have been, but at the same time, they just haven't been getting it done.
So it's basically loyalty to a fault with Spaghetti.
Perfect way to describe it. Loyalty to a fault.
Okay, now with DaCosta coming in, what kind of head coach will he be searching for?
I think that's to be determined, because since he hasn't been a GM for us, we don't know what type of style he'll have. We don't know if he'll adapt to stuff like Ozzie Newsome did, or if he'll try to take something like Ozzie Newsome did and put his own spin on it, or just come with a brand new approach. So what I'm hoping for with Eric DaCosta, I'm just hoping that he tries to adapt to the way the league is now. It's an offense-driven league. It's about scoring points, and I just hope, not to say that I will want him to neglect defense, but just to put more effort in on offense. So if he brings in a head coach, if he brings in a new coaching staff, which most likely he will, just for him to build around the offense a lot more, because right now the offense is something that's an afterthought. It's always been an afterthought with Ozzie Newsome, because his style of football, his style of assembling a team is just built around the defense. That's where he spends most of the money at, is defense. And offense, I just get some leftovers. I'll find a guy that just got cut from the team. That first wave of free agency, he won't even take a look at those guys. The second wave of free agency, maybe. But the third wave, that's where Ozzie Newsome looks for the wide receivers to come in, running backs, tight ends, whoever. He just looks at leftovers. We never get that first piece of the pie when it comes to offense. So just looking for DaCosta just to become a lot more, or just to be a lot more offensive minded than the staff currently is. And just to bring in a staff where they can build around the offense. And if they're going to give the keys to Lamar Jackson, then they can build around him. And just give him weapons that he can grow with. Because that's something that they never really did that for Flacco. And it's funny that the receiver that Flacco had the most chemistry with, and nobody has even come close to, was Torrey Smith. And that was the only receiver that Flacco had from Torrey Smith's rookie year till Torrey Smith ended up leaving. And they had the best chemistry out of Flacco out of any receiver that Flacco's ever played with. So they just got to get more offensive minded.
Yeah, I agree that the Ravens always build with that old school mentality, because Ozzie Newsome is an old school guy because he played in such a rougher era at his position, which is tight end. And yeah, and also speaking of the Ravens offense, it seemed like they also were lucky to find like diamonds in the rough, like a Ray Rice, who had a pretty solid career before he had his trouble. And, like you said, they found guys that were cut like an Anquan Bolden. So, yeah, I do agree that the Ravens still have that old school mentality, because let's keep it real. If it wasn't for that defense for that first Super Bowl, they would have lost. Because Trent Dilfer, in my opinion, is one of the worst quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl.
You ain't lying, man.
Shoot, I even take Brad Johnson over him.
Ooh, yeah, that's rough. I agree though. I agree. So yeah, they got to get with the times though, man. Yeah, thank goodness that defense was that defense was legendary, man. It's crazy to think of just how good they were, but that's insane, man. Yeah. But yeah, you can't do it like that in today's NFL with the rules, with just the way that everything's set up. It's just not built like that anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately not. Okay, so which route should the Ravens go for their next head coach? Like the college route, the coordinator route, or even a special teams coach route like they did with Harbaugh?
I would like them to get. It would be sort of tricky on if it could even work like this, but I would like them to get an offensive coordinator as a head coach. Excuse me, and for the For the offensive coordinator position, though, because I would want an NFL offensive coordinator as a head coach. But for the offensive coordinator position, I would want somebody out of college. Because I would want somebody that can be creative. Like I said, if they're going to give the keys to Lamar Jackson, I would want somebody that is with it, they fresh out of college, so they know what it's like to have a super mobile quarterback, somebody that's worked with mobile quarterbacks, somebody that's worked with dual threat quarterbacks, and has really taken advantage of their ability and really just exhausted everything with them as far as how to make them pass better, how they can pass on the run, play, just everything, just to really utilize them as much as they possibly could. So I would like it to be, like I said, NFL offensive coordinator as a head coach, and then college head coach as our offensive coordinator.
Okay, you said that you had issues with Harbaugh's coordinators. What are your issues with them to the point that you wouldn't even promote them to head coaches?
With Marty Mornhinweg, Harbaugh likes to hire friends a lot. And you understand why. I mean, since that happens with enough of us, you might get your own business or get something, and you want to put your friends on because you feel like, oh, they can do the job, they know you, and you'll be cool and whatever. So Harbaugh does that with his friends. And again, like you mentioned when you summed it up, the loyalty to a fault. Mornhinweg was one of Harbaugh's guys that he selected, and he just there can be such a lack of creativity, and there can be such a lack of adapting from game to game. There can be times where you see, because you can't play everybody the same. You can't go against every opponent the same. And a lot of times with Marty Mornhinweg, our offensive coordinator, a lot of our games, they look the exact same. And again, it's the lack of creativity. It's the game plan. It's just a lack of running the ball. Because Marty, he is super pass happy, and our run offense hasn't been the best because of the block. The blocking hasn't been the best, but he gets so pass happy, and they can forget to run the ball. And Ravens have some statistic where I forgot what it is, but it's when they don't run the ball a certain amount of times, they're like 0-30 something in those games, something like that. And sometimes he can just neglect the run game too much. So I would not want him, if he can't even lead the offense, I wouldn't want him even leading the team. For defensive coordinator, Don Martindale, he's our current defensive coordinator. And he's been pretty good. We've seen some improvements for the past couple of weeks. We got some work to do. He's been getting out coached, definitely in that Pittsburgh game. But with him, the reason why I wouldn't want him to be a head coach is because he's a defensive coordinator. So I would feel like we would still run the risk of being on that same boat, being stuck with just focusing on defense so much, since that's his specialty. So I would, and with Jerry Rossberg, that's our special teams coordinator. With him, I feel like he definitely deserves a shot to be a head coach. And I'm kind of torn with him because he's a special teams head coach. Harbaugh was a special teams head coach too. And with Jerry Rossberg, he always got his unit on point. Special teams has, for the longest, it has always been the last thing that we have to worry about. So it's like I'm torn because I would really want somebody who would be focused on offense, and with him being a special teams coordinator, he obviously got the special teams knowledge and whatnot. But I wouldn't want us to be in another John Harbaugh situation. And I don't know how he would be as a head coach. I obviously wouldn't know until he actually got the shot. But I would just be worried if he became our head coach that it would just be that we would run the risk of being in another situation like we are now, where we're behind and our offense isn't with the times.
Okay. Do you have any names that the Ravens should look at for a head coach?
Saints. I would look at Saints offensive coordinator. I believe his name is Pete Carmichael, and he's sort of like a lot of Saints fans tell me he's an unsung hero of the Saints, because I wasn't even aware that they had an offensive coordinator. I thought it was just Sean Payton that was running the show on offense. But whether it be a Saints offensive coordinator, some people have been suggesting North Turner, but
nah.
about him. Maybe as an offensive coordinator, but head coach, I don't know about the head coach part. So yeah, that would be the only person I was thinking of right now. Saints offensive coordinator, Pete Carmichael. Other than that, off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody else.
Okay.
Maybe possibly somebody just waiting in the wings. Somebody just waiting to get their shot. Who could just show up and show out. So, and of course, we got Greg Roman on the staff right now, but and he worked with Kaepernick before, and obviously he had a lot of success with him. But with him having been under Harbaugh, he may end up getting the boot too. So yeah, we just gotta wait and see. But yeah, Carmichael would be the only guy that I can think of right now.
Okay. So, what would make the Ravens head coaching job attractive?
What will make the Ravens head coaching job attractive would be the fact that you got guys on defense. You got youth on defense, and the fact that you're not. While you can rebuild, and you can consider yourself in rebuilding mode, you got a lot of youth and you have a lot of potential. And you can consider it to be in rebuild mode because they're most likely going to get rid of a lot of those older veteran guys. Probably especially if Harbaugh goes to like a Weddle, maybe Tony Jefferson, Jimmy Smith. I could even see them letting C.J. Mosley walk, Crabtree. But anyway, because it's a team, you can inherit a team that if you can get that offense right, and if you can get that offense going, then you're not going to be far off. You're not going to be far from competing. You're not going to be far from being in contention. You're not going to be far off. It's not like it'll be like a 2, 3, 4 year project or anything like that. It's a possibility. You bring the right coordinators in place, you bring the right staff in place, you could, and you. If they do get rid of a lot of those older veteran guys, it's a possibility that you add a few pieces in free agency and whatnot, and obviously through the draft, you could be right in this thing next year if you got the right coaching staff in place. And again, it all depends on if and Flacco will probably be another one of those guys that's going too. But if you can really take this guy Lamar Jackson and really just let him show out, man. If you can utilize his talent, utilize his arm strength, utilize his legs, just get him as a nice passer. If you can just work on him, develop him the right way, it could be dangerous, man. He could be dangerous, and he got a lot of potential. All he needs is just the right coaches in place, the right staff in place, and the right pieces around him. And if you can be right in this thing even next year, like I said, with the right coaching staff.
Okay, now what would make the Ravens head coaching job unattractive?
Unattractive. That's a good question. What would make it unattractive? Well, it would depend on how a coach or a candidate felt about Lamar Jackson. Maybe they feel like, hey, maybe that guy's not a franchise quarterback. We can't build a team around him. He's too small. Some people might feel like that. He's not a developed enough passer, because that's what a lot of people like to say. Or they may feel like, man, this Ravens team, they may feel like they just not built to win right now, and it's going to take some time. For it being an unattractive job, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard because the team has a lot of stability. The organization, they have a lot of stability. That's a tough one right there. That is a tough one. Or you could see what the GM has done recently. If you are an offensive-minded kind of guy, and you look to see the type of players that the GM has recently signed for offense, you may feel like, man, these guys, they really don't care about offense like that. So what am I going to go there for? And they just shoot down any ideas that I have for adding key pieces on offense. If I want to sign this guy who's one of the top free agents on offense, they might shoot that down just because that's just not what they do over there. So that the fear of the Ravens organization not changing their mentality on the offense, that could be something that will make somebody look negatively on becoming the head coach of the Ravens.
Okay, now back to the front office. What will DeCosta bring that Ozzie Newsome didn't?
Youth, and just a different viewpoint of the game. It was like you were speaking about earlier, how Ozzie Newsome, he played in it, the old school guy, but he still has that, he brought that old school mentality with him as a GM. And it worked for a while, but it's just, it ain't working no more. So with Eric DeCosta, I just expect him to bring a youth movement and for him to adapt to the way that the game is being played now.
All right. So which teams will be looking at Harbaugh for their next head coach?
Cleveland Browns. I would not be surprised at all. If Harbaugh does get fired, I would not be surprised at all if they're the team that he gets hired to, that he goes to. Reason being, because I think it would be just a little extra motivation. And they got a nice team too. I feel like Cleveland, man, they are like right there. They are on the cusp of something serious. They obviously got their quarterback of the future. Got some nice young players around offense and on defense. So Cleveland, they are a problem. They are a problem. So I think that Cleveland will be a team. And then plus, if he went to Cleveland, if he went to Cleveland, he'd be able to go against the Ravens 2 times a year and try to show them that they made a mistake. So Cleveland would be somewhere that I would feel like he almost would be destined to go there.
So you don't see Harbaugh going to any NFC teams or other AFC teams?
I mean, yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, you see what the Broncos do. See if the Dolphins keep Adam Gase. We'll see if I think Giants will keep the head coach. There's the Jets. But I just, on the top of the list out of everybody, I see it being Cleveland. I really do.
That would be interesting. It would make some hell of a storylines if the Browns did hire him. That would make some great storylines.
That would be such a Browns move, too. It would be such a Browns move. Because they'd be able to offer however much money, man. Because Browns, they can pay whatever. They always got cap room. And then, of course, head coach salary, not part of the salary cap for the roster. But, yeah, that would be such a Browns move. And that's where I do think he's going to go. If everything does go down, I can see it, man.
Okay, now what is the case for Harbaugh being hired by an NFL team, and what's the case against him?
Case for him, his resume. His resume looks excellent. I mean, he will have been a coach for 11 years, and 6 out of those 11 years, he will have depending on how this year goes, we'll see. But say, for instance, he doesn't make the playoffs this year. 6 out of those 11 years, he will have made the playoffs. 6 out of those 11 years, he will have won at least one playoff game. AFC championships, obviously the Super Bowl. Just having not been, because if they run with this whole mutual parting of ways, it's sort of like at a job. It always looks better if you get laid off rather than you getting fired. So that would look like he got laid off and like it was an agreement that both of them came to together. So it's not like he got fired. And he only had, and it still depends on how this season goes, but say the worst this season goes is 8-8. If it does go like that, then the worst, he will have only had one. Technically, he will have only had one losing record, which came in 2015. And it's like they can look at that and be like, oh man, well, that's when Flacco got hurt for the season. Steve Smith was hurt for the season. and they lost like everybody that year. Everybody was hurt. So it would almost be like, he gets a pass for that. That's what he would have for him. His resume, it's a very impressive resume if you look at it on paper. Now, what he would have against him would be just recent success, and recent inability to close big games. The Ravens, the past, depending on how this year goes, so it can leave this year out for now. But in 2017 and 2016, and then back in 2013, because the other years of 2015 when everybody was hurt, so he got a pass, and then in 2014 he made the playoffs. But in 2013, 2016, and 17, they have been in positions to get to the playoffs. They have literally been 1 or 2 games away, and they end up losing. They couldn't close it out, couldn't clutch it out, and so the team fell short. So that's the biggest thing that I would think would be against him. Just recent success and just recent inability over those years not to close out the big games and advance to that next part of the season, being the postseason.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because I even look at this year that there were some games that the Ravens could have won, but they lost, i.e. the Browns in Cleveland, which it seemed like nobody wanted to win that game, but ultimately the Browns prevailed in overtime. Mm-hmm. So, what were your thoughts on that game as far as his coaching?
Just the offense was it was an ugly thing to watch. It was an ugly thing to watch, and there were some people that tried to call out the defense in overtime, like, oh man, yeah, the defense, they gave up all those yards in overtime. But it's like, man, no, the defense did what they had to do. And it went back to what we were talking about earlier with the offense. The offense is not with the times right now. The offense is not, they so far behind. They're not really explosive. And not taking away, I don't want to discredit the Browns defense at all, because the defense is young, they're fast, they're strong, super, super talented. Super, super talented. And they're only going to get better. So definitely don't want to discredit them at all. But Ravens, they did enough to win the game, but it's just there was some poor play calling. Like one of Flacco's interceptions, he threw it at the goal line. It was second and goal, and I'm at home. I'm being a couch coach, and I'm thinking, okay, second and goal, yeah, run the ball, man. We got Alex Collins, we got Buck, just run the ball, man. You on the goal line. But they did a play. I feel like they just tried to get too pretty at times. That's what it was. They tried to get too pretty, tried to get a little too fancy. And it just is that with Marty Mornhinweg, offensive coordinator. That was, I think, one of his worst games. But they did do enough to win the game, because Flacco, they went on a game-winning drive at the end of the fourth quarter. Flacco threw a touchdown, but Michael Crabtree just dropped it. So that was a whole nother issue right there.
Okay, so you felt that game was a big letdown after the Ravens had won in Pittsburgh a week earlier?
Oh yeah. Because you go to Pittsburgh. They have been the AFC North for the longest. I don't even remember the last time they lost the division. But they have been it in the AFC North, and especially coming into this year, we were down that game. We did not have Jimmy Smith, who coming into this season was our best corner, but it's not looking like that anymore. But we didn't have Jimmy Smith. We were missing the defensive lineman. Still didn't have our rookie Hayden Hurst. So it was like, man, the Ravens are down right now, but they're down all these players, and going into Pittsburgh, like, oof. I don't know about this one. I thought they were going to lose that game, but they showed out, and they actually should have won by a lot more than they did. They just missed a couple opportunities. Flacco overthrew Michael Crabtree on an easy touchdown where Crabtree was wide open. Alex Collins fumbled at the 1 yard line, right on the goal line. So yeah, after seeing what they did, and after even leaving opportunities on the field and still to handle Pittsburgh like they did, and not even to go against a team with Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner, Jesse James, even James Washington, and who's a little slot receiver? He came from the Cowboys. I forgot his name. But to go up against a team that has so much firepower on offense and hold them to 0 points in the second half, not even field goal, but 0 points. I'm like, oh yeah, this Ravens defense is for real. And this team may even be for real. And then to go to Cleveland the next week and just pretty much lay an egg like that, I was just like, oh boy, these are. And then Eric Weddle too. Eric Weddle, he talked about, hey, what did I tell y'all? These ain't the same old Ravens. He said that after that Pittsburgh game, and then for them to go to Cleveland and do what they did there, it's like, oh, what's that, man? But part of the game, man. Part of the game.
Okay, now if you were ownership in the front office, when would you have gotten rid of Harbaugh?
2 years ago. 2 years ago. That's when I would have got rid of him 2 years ago, because I would have got rid of him back then. So I feel like we were in position to win, got the roster to win, but again, just don't close it out. Didn't close it out, and again, it's about success. It's about recent success in the league. If you're not giving a team recent success, if you haven't had recent success, time to go, man. Nothing personal, but you got to go. So for me, it would have been 2 years ago.
Okay, so the Ravens not getting rid of Harbaugh 2 years ago, do you think that's held the team back?
Yeah, I do. I do. And again, not to continue to bring it up again, but again, like you said, man, loyalty to a fault. But I think, and I saw it myself too. But I think what ownership saw was like, man, we got potential. We really got potential, and we're right there. We are right there, and it's been like that every year, because this team, Ravens, every single year since John Harbaugh's been here, every single year except 2015, and that was when everybody got hurt. But every single year since John Harbaugh has been here, the Ravens have been in win now mode. They've been in win now mode. They've always been competitive, except in 2015. They always had a chance to go to the playoffs every single year, except 2015. And the thing, even about 2015, when so many players were on injury reserve and so many starters too, they only lost 2 games that season by more than 1 score. So even though they had so many guys hurt, they were still in all the games that year. But they obviously ain't winning. So he's been there, and he's had the team in contention, but they just, after all the boys left, just things are just never the same after that. They're never the same after that.
So you feel instead of the Ravens being in win now mode, they should have been more in rebuilding and reloading mode?
Yeah, and I feel like even with the talent they had on the team, I don't even think they would have had to necessarily rebuild, but more so just retool, just get a few pieces here and there, and just change a few philosophies, and I feel like they could have had a lot more success over the past couple of years. But they obviously didn't, and we obviously haven't. So yeah, but we would have if we would have got rid of Harbaugh a couple of years ago, we still would have had Flacco, which he has been a big part of all of this stuff too, because of his contract. We locked in the Flacco, and this coming off season will be the first one where we can actually release him, and we can save a lot more money than damage that it would do to our salary cap. Because any other year, if we would have cut him, it would kill the salary cap because there's so much dead money. But now they're actually in shape to get rid of Flacco and go in another direction and save a lot of money. So if we would have got rid of Harbaugh, then maybe a different offensive coordinator could have got a little more out of Flacco, or something different out of Flacco. Who knows? It's something that we'll just never know. But the reason I bring that up is because I feel like we could have still been in win now mode. I feel like right now we could be in rebuild mode, because we're most likely going to be starting with a new quarterback, and we're most likely going to be getting rid of a lot of guys who we couldn't get rid of before a few years back because of their contracts. Because their contracts are newer, because their contracts just would have caused us to have a lot of dead money. But right now we're in a position to get rid of a lot of those guys and get a lot of salary cap relief, and probably have the most salary cap space that probably I've ever seen this Ravens team have, depending on who they let go. That's what I think. If we would have got rid of Harbaugh a couple years ago, they still would have been they wouldn't have been in rebuild mode yet. But now is a good time to start over.
Yeah, speaking of Flacco's contract, I still can't figure out to this day why Ozzie Newsome gave Flacco that contract. That's another reason why a lot of those players on that Super Bowl team left, because Flacco got most of the money. It was a dumb mistake to let Anquan Bolden go, Bernard Pollard go. Also, even to let Ed Reed go. No way in the world I would have gave Flacco that money. That's Drew Brees money, Aaron Rodgers money, Tom Brady money. I mean, yeah, Flacco, he had one great playoff run, and he's been great in the playoffs, but no, Flacco was not worth that kind of money.
Yeah, and it's tricky. It's really tricky because, yeah, that is your franchise quarterback, and that's the best quarterback that the Ravens have ever had consistently. Because they did have Steve McNair for a year and change. Then we know what happened with that, unfortunately. But yeah, Flacco has been the best quarterback that the Ravens have ever had. He's been their their longest tenured quarterback. So it's kind of with him being the Ravens' best quarterback, that's kind of a misleading attribute, I guess, because he doesn't have that much competition to go up against. Because Ravens have never really, besides Steve McNair, but Ravens have never really had a good quarterback. That's just not. They've always been built around the defense, and the quarterbacks they've been there. They just been game managers or whatever, and they ain't really been nothing special. So I guess Ozzie Newsome, and of course winning has a lot to do with everything. Because had the Ravens not been winning like that, and had they not had that success in the playoffs, then Flacco, he would just be another guy that probably got on up out of here, and he was gone. But yeah, that playoff run, and they tried to actually sign him to a deal the year before or earlier in that year, but I think there was like a dispute over like $1 million or something like that. It was not that much money that the dispute was over, so they ended up just playing out. Flacco ended up playing out his deal, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So it was almost like Ozzie Newsome almost had to pay him because they didn't win the Super Bowl in spite of Joe Flacco. They won that Super Bowl because of him. He was such a huge part of that Super Bowl, of the playoffs and all that. Of the playoffs and all that. So it was almost they were stuck in between a rock and a hard place. So they shelved over that money. Then it got ugly after that. So
okay,
that's what it is.
Okay, now final question: what will the next coach have to do to connect with young players like a Lamar Jackson?
Talk to him, and be more so. Not even talk to him, but be willing to listen. And that's what a lot of coaches. That's what a lot of the players say they love about Martindale, about our defensive coordinator, that they can talk to him. He takes feedback from them. It's not a my way or the highway type of thing. It's just they can have open dialogue, and they can actually learn from each other. As long as the coach he can do both teaching and learning too. Because just because you're a teacher doesn't mean that you can't learn something from the student, or you all can help each other get better. So as long as he can do that, be a player's coach, and really be willing to not only teach but also willing to learn too, then I think he'll be in good shape.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree. Because I think like you said, that was the biggest problem with Harbaugh, his disconnect with players. And not just with young players, but as well as the veterans.
Right. Exactly.
So, well, all right, IngravenVids. Y'all check out his YouTube channel. This man gives great insight to the Ravens as well as the NFL. Once again, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, appreciate it a lot, man. Thanks for having me on here.
No problem.